right, so week 3. Holy cow, I got a lot of changes done this week. So there were 3 major changes I added to the game. The first of those changes being finishing the silo boss and adding the boss arena zone that you fight him in. So to finish the silo boss, I added a lovely death animation for him, and that took way too long to add. It took a really long time to get all the... because of every single one of the carrot's legs had to be animated. But that's done now, and it looks really nice, and I'm happy with it. And then I added in a new attack to the silo boss. So normally when you fight the silo boss, at least I found when I fought him, I had a tendency to be above him, because when he spawns those evil carrots and they fall on the ground corrupted, they only see down. So if you're above him, you don't have to deal with those carrots at all. You can just ignore them and fight the boss. It's a valid strategy, but it's more fun to have to deal with the carrots as they sort of rush down on you and try to figure out, dodge them, and be in the moment, right? So to sort of add that back into it and not trivialize the player strategy of going above it, I added a single attack where the boss will run above the player and then do the shake attack where he shakes and spawns a ton of carrots. That way it forces you into this defensive position where you're dodging in and out of the carrots and trying to survive while also fighting the boss. I thought it was a lot of fun. Other than that, I added in the transform animation for the Corruptor transforming the silo boss, so you can actually see the little tarantula corrupt him now, and I really like this animation because it doesn't force you to watch it, right? It's not going to grab the player's camera and drag it over to where this animation is. Instead, you're going to see this Corruptor that you chase after, because the player, at least I'm assuming, really hates these things, because they spawn all these horrible things as they go up to this point, right? So when the player goes to chase after them to kill them, suddenly they see, oh, it's on top of this thing with carrots. Oh, it's corrupting the whole thing! And now instead of just dealing with the Corruptor, they're dealing with its big old scary friend, right? Other than that, in the silo boss zone, I fiddled around with that, and you can sort of see in the silo boss zone there are lurkers scattered here and there. I fiddled around with different layouts, and I really like the lurkers. They sort of cause the player to be more cautious of where he's moving, right? And then also they clear out some of the carrot enemies that spawn, give the player a little bit more breather room. So solid inclusion into the boss gauntlet. Other than the boss gauntlet, the second main feature that I finished was a zone that leads up to the boss arena. I call the zone the silo fields. It's because it's where the bunnies are going to store their silos. This zone serves a lot of purposes. The primary gameplay purpose is that it's the only carrot gauntlet zone where instead of moving from the top down like you do in the 2 previous zones, you're going to move from the bottom up. So instead of the carrots spawning in below you and then you having to figure out how to move below them, they're going to spawn above you and attack you, and you have to figure out how to dodge them. It makes it a much more intense travel to get to the top, and it's a little more difficult in the prior zones. In addition to that, this is the first time I actually introduced that silo sprite, because I don't want the first time the player sees this silo thing to be inside the boss zone. So like, what is this weird thing that they find, you know? So, to compensate that, I add a ton of these silo sprites. Maybe not a ton, just a few of them in the silo zone, so it's not the first time the player's seen that. And actually, that brings me to the next change that I added, which came about because I realized that the player lost a lot of game information visibility behind these massive silo sprites because of how big they were, right? So I decided to add a simple little node in Godot that it's just an area. All it does is it makes the parent see-through when the player enters the area. And this node can be attached to any object in Godot, so I can have the behavior on anything. I could even have it on like the little pine trees I have scattered out. I haven't added it yet to the pine trees, but I'm considering doing it. I'll see how I feel about it later. Other than those major... Oh, yeah, the collision. So, oh boy. I went in and I reworked the entire layer and mask system, and it's alright if that doesn't mean very much. Basically, I reworked the collision system of the game. So all of it is now going through a single enumerator location, and it's beautiful, and it makes my programmer self happy. So it's, if I want to change it in the future, I do it in that one location. I don't have to go through and change the collision of every single object like I did when I implemented it. Also, when reworking the system, I added in super layers. So there's a layer for the player, and this is a little technical. You can, I guess, ignore it if it doesn't mean too much to you. But there's a layer for the player, the enemies, the train, and then pickups. And I added in super layers so you can be on the player layer on the burrow layer. So you're inside the burrow layer on the player layer. Or inside the flight layer and the player layer when I implement birds later down the line. Anything, and because of the way I did it, I can add any number of these so-called super layers to the game, will maintain the player layers, and I don't have to change the collision for every single game object, because it's all going through that one location. So, a little bit technical, but it's super nice for the rest of the game. On smaller changes, I increased the size of the spider enemy. He was too small. He could not hit you very well, and you couldn't really hit him very well with the player's increased movement speed, and he also couldn't see you very well. So I also increased the range that he could see you on. And then I went in and I routed all enemy sounds through the generic enemy bus, so they're all now limited like they should have been previously, and I think I added in as just the default behavior for enemies. I'll have to go ahead and double check that to make sure. I'm not quite sure I'm still happy with that solution yet, though, because yes, it's limited, yes, it doesn't get loud, but there's still, especially you'll notice it when the silo boss spawns tons of these carrots, right? There's clipping in the noise still because it's getting way too loud, so I think I'm still going to have to go in and fiddle around with it to try and make it sound more akin to my liking. That was pretty much it for this week. Next week, hopefully, I'll figure out how the player's going to get out of that boss arena, right? Because I don't want to have them wade through the entire previous, carrot gauntlet to get back to where they started, with all the enemies dead, nothing to do, right? After that, I need to fix the statues. Their Y sorting is janky, and they're detecting player speech even when the player's not speaking, which is bad. That should not happen. And once I get those done, I might add state to bosses. So the game needs to know when you've killed a boss to open up other zones when certain numbers of bosses are killed. And after I get that done, I can move on to not the carrot motif zone, the statue motif zone. Yeah! I'm really excited for that, and I can start adding new enemies and stuff. But yeah, until then.